The sun is not gone yet, but in 8 minutes, you won't know. That's the delay. 8 minutes and 20 seconds of light already traveling toward your eyes, already in transit from a star that, if it vanished this instant, would give you no warning, no flash, no signal. Just 8 minutes of ordinary sky, and then darkness so complete that nothing in recorded human history comes close to describing it. But here's what almost no one considers. The light is not your problem. This is not a thought experiment about dark. This is a precise, physics-driven countdown, and it ends in a way that will fundamentally change how you think about the star outside your window. Let's establish one fact that physics demands we accept before we go any further. The sun does not belong to the present. Every time you look at it through a window, reflected in water, felt warm against your face on a cold afternoon, you are looking at an image from 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. The sun you see right now left its source before you finished reading the last paragraph. It departed a star that may, in some extreme theoretical sense, no longer be precisely as it was. You have never, not once in your life, seen the sun as it actually is times right now. That delay is not an abstraction. It is a physical property of light, 299,792 kilometers per second, the universe's non-negotiable speed limit, enforced without exception, and it is exactly that delay that makes the disappearance scenario so psychologically brutal. Because the 8 minutes don't just mean you'd be uninformed, they mean you'd be comfortable, going about your evening, making dinner, watching something, completely unaware that the gravitational anchor of your entire solar system had just ceased to exist. There is something uniquely unsettling about that. Not the catastrophe itself, but the gap between when it happens and when you feel it. And that gap, those 8 minutes, is where this story truly lives. Because within that window, something else begins. Something that moves at the same speed as light. Something that would seal Earth's fate before the sky went dark. But to understand why any of this matters on a scale beyond physics, beyond equations on a whiteboard, we need to go back. Back to the only moment in recorded history when humanity genuinely confronted the terror of a silent, invisible, inaccessible universe, the 20th of July, 1969, 1721, Universal Time. The Apollo 11 command module, Columbia, slipped behind the lunar horizon and disappeared from every radio station on Earth simultaneously. In Mission Control Houston, the screens went flat. Not dead flat. Every telemetry channel, every voice loop, every biomedical sensor readout, silent. Flight director Gene Kranz later described it as the loneliest feeling in spaceflight, and he was on the ground. Michael Collins was alone in that spacecraft for 48 minutes per orbit, 21 orbits in total, completely unreachable. No voice, no signal, no confirmation that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had survived the lunar surface. He floated in the command module, on the far side of the moon, separated from all human contact by 384,400 kilometers of vacuum and a wall of rock. Collins later wrote about those minutes with an honesty that most astronauts avoid. He said he did not feel fear. What he felt was something more profound and harder to name. He called it awareness. Pure, unmediated awareness of his position in the cosmos. Awareness of the billion people on the other side of this small moon and the total absence of them. Now consider this. Collins experienced isolation from humanity for 48 minutes per orbit. He knew it was temporary. He knew there was a planet behind the moon. He knew, with certainty, that the sun was there. What we are describing tonight is not 48 minutes. It is not recoverable, and there is no far side to emerge. The disappearance of the sun would create the largest, most absolute communication failure in human history. Not because of technology, but because there would be nothing left to receive a signal times. And unlike Collins, who knew exactly where he was and what surrounded him, the 8 billion people on Earth would have no such certainty. For 8 minutes and 20 seconds, they would have no idea anything had changed. There is a particular cruelty in that. Not ignorance as protection, ignorance as delay. The difference between not knowing something and knowing something too late. That distinction is about to become very precise. The instant the sun disappears, and by disappears we mean ceases to exist, no explosion, no gradual dimming, just a sudden ontological absence, two things depart from that point in space simultaneously: light and gravity. This is where most people's intuition fails them. We tend to think of gravity as a static thing, a presence, a field, something that simply times is. But according to general relativity, gravity propagates. It travels outward as a wave, curving space-time as it goes, and it travels at exactly the speed of light. 299,792 kilometers per second, which means the gravitational consequence of the sun's disappearance and the visual consequence of the sun's disappearance arrive at Earth at the exact same moment, 8 minutes and 20 seconds after the event. Not 8 minutes of darkness followed by gravitational chaos. Both, simultaneously, at the same instant. Imagine you are standing outside at night, looking up at a sky that looks completely normal. Stars in their places. The light already in transit is still beautiful, still orderly. And then, in one single instant, the sky goes dark time, and times the Earth releases from its orbit. Not sequential, together. One moment, normal sky. The next, darkness and freedom. Earth, no longer gravitationally bound to the sun, would follow Newton's first law with perfect indifference. It would continue moving in a straight line at its current orbital velocity of approximately 29.8 kilometers per second into interstellar space. But here's what that number actually means in human terms. 29.8 kilometers per second feels enormous. It is enormous by any surface standard, but in the context of interstellar space, it is almost nothing. The nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, sits 4.24 light-years away. At Earth's escape velocity, reaching it would take approximately 37,000 years. We would be moving. We would be going nowhere. And in that first night, that first extraordinary, world-altering night, none of that would matter yet. What would matter is this. Within 6 hours of the sun's disappearance, surface temperatures would begin falling below 0 Celsius across most of the planet. Within a week, they'd reach minus 18 degrees Celsius. Within a year, minus 73 degrees Celsius. Within a decade, the oceans would be frozen solid to a depth of several meters. But the core of the Earth remains geothermal, hot, active, alive. Which means, and this is the technical revelation that changes everything, not all life dies immediately. Some of it might not die at all. But what the survivors would experience on that first night, psychologically, socially, spiritually, is not something physics can predict. And it may be the most important part of this entire scenario. Let's slow down, because this is where the thought experiment stops being about physics and becomes about people. In 1972, Apollo 17 astronaut Edgar Mitchell was returning from the moon, the last human being to walk on the lunar surface, when he looked out the window at the Earth, then at the sun, then at the stars, and experienced what he later described as an instant of knowing. Not a religious experience, he insisted. Something more precise. A sudden, overwhelming comprehension of the interconnection between every atom in his body and every star in that window. He said it took 15 minutes. He said he was never the same. He had seen the sun from a distance. He understood its scale. He understood what it meant to be this far from it. Now ask yourself, what would you understand about the sun the moment it was gone? Psychologists who study large-scale catastrophic events, hurricanes, earthquakes, the immediate aftermath of terror, consistently find that human beings, in the first hours of sudden loss, do not panic. They go very, very quiet. They seek proximity to other people. They make phone calls. They go outside and look up. The disappearance of the sun would trigger the largest collective looking up in human history. In cities, the light pollution that has for generations hidden the night sky from billions of people would vanish within hours. Not eventually, hours. As power grids strained, as fuel became precious, as the calculus of energy changed overnight, cities would dim. And for the first time in the lives of most people alive today, the full, unobstructed night sky, 400 billion stars in the Milky Way, would become visible. There is something almost unbearably poignant about that. The moment we lose the sun, we inherit the universe. But grief is not orderly, and humans in extremis are not uniformly poetic. Consider the specificity of what each person on Earth would confront. A farmer in Iowa, whose entire livelihood, whose crops, whose identity is tied to a relationship with the sun that goes back to before recorded agriculture, would feel a kind of loss that a physicist or a philosopher might not have language for. It's not just climate, it's cosmological bereavement. The death of something they never thought to fear losing, because it was, by definition, the thing that was always there. A marine biologist in the Maldives, who has spent her career studying coral reefs' ecosystem, built entirely on photosynthesis, on the conversion of sunlight into life, would know within hours what was coming. She would know before the temperature dropped. She would understand the biological cascade, phytoplankton dying within days, the food chain collapsing upward from there, ocean ecosystems unraveling in sequence like a sentence losing its words one by one, and a child somewhere, anywhere, looking up at a sky suddenly full of stars they've never seen before, not yet knowing what it means, only knowing it is different, only knowing it is beautiful. What do you tell that child? Researchers at Stanford's Center for Space Policy and Strategy published frameworks in the 2010s examining human psychological response to existential threats, scenarios where survival is possible but not guaranteed, and where the threat is permanent rather than temporary. Their findings converge on a single uncomfortable conclusion. The human mind is extraordinarily capable of adaptation, but that adaptation requires narrative. It requires a story about what comes next. Without the sun, for the first time in the species' existence, there would be no next as we had ever understood it. No seasons to wait for, no harvest to plan, no sunrise that the human circadian rhythm built over 300,000 years had been anticipating since the last one. The poet Wisława Szymborska, writing about death and the vast indifference of the universe, once said, "I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing poems. In the darkness of a sunless earth, that the impulse to create meaning in the face of cosmic indifference, would be the most human thing left. And some people would act on it. Some would build. Some would go underground, toward geothermal heat, toward nuclear energy, toward hydroponic farms lit by artificial light. Some would, against all rational expectation, survive. The question is not whether they could. The question is what they would carry with them. 8 minutes and 20 seconds after the sun disappears here is what that moment actually looks, sounds, and feels like. You are standing outside. It is evening. The sun has already set, so you don't see the darkness arrive. What you feel first is nothing. Absolutely nothing. The temperature is normal. The stars are out. The world is exactly as it was 10 seconds ago. And then, not gradually, not with warning the orbital path of the Earth, which has held perfect elliptical geometry for 4.5 billion years, simply ends. Ends is too dramatic a word. Nothing explodes. Nothing shatters. The Earth does not lurch or shake. Geologically, seismically, physically, nothing immediately changes. The planet simply continues moving in the direction it was already heading, like a ball released from a string mid-swing. No drama, no announcement, just continuation without constraint. But the sky changes. Astronomers, those few who are awake, who are watching, who have instruments pointed at the right part of the solar system, would notice first. Not by looking at where the sun set, by looking at the planet. Jupiter, visible to the naked eye, would within 43 minutes cease to receive solar light, its reflected glow, already 8 minutes old when it reaches us, would then require another 35 minutes to cross Jupiter's distance. Within the hour, the familiar arrangement of planetary light in the night sky begins to go wrong. Not all at once. In sequence, one light dimming, then another, like stars going out. And here is the revelation. This entire scenario was always building to. The last image of the sun that any human eye will ever see will already be 8 minutes old when it reaches the retina. A ghost. A memory that traveled at the speed of light to reach you. And the last warmth you feel on your skin if you are outside at the right latitude, at the right moment, will be infrared radiation that departed a star that no longer exists. You will feel the warmth of something that is gone. There is no more precise definition of what the sun has always been. Not the star itself, but the continuous, ancient gift of energy it has been sending outward for 4.6 billion years. The light hitting your face on any given Tuesday morning left before your grandparents were born, before the first cities, before the first written word. It has been in transit longer than human civilization has existed, and it has been every single morning exactly on time. Astronomer Carl Sagan once wrote, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know it." He was right biochemically, literally, verifiably right. Every atom of calcium in your bones, every atom of iron in your blood was forged in the nuclear core of a star. Not the sun, older stars, dead stars, stars that exploded before the solar system formed. But the sun took that material and organized, warmed it, held it in orbit long enough for chemistry to become biology, and biology to become consciousness, and consciousness to become a species that would one day stand on the surface of the moon and look back. We did not come from the Sunday, but we came from what the sun came from, and we grew up in its light. In the silence of a sunless night, in the extraordinary, star-filled, terrifying, luminous silence of a world suddenly unanchored, the most honest thing a human being could say might be this: we didn't know how much we were paying attention until we had nothing left to look at. This was never a disaster scenario. It was a clarification. The sun is not the background. It is not scenery. It is not the yellow thing that makes the weather. Vitamin D, and summer. It is the gravitational and thermodynamic author of every living system on this planet, of every calorie ever consumed by every organism that has ever existed here, of every photon that has ever allowed a human eye to form an image of another human face. It is the context in which everything you have ever done, everything you have ever loved, everything you have ever feared took place, and it will be gone. Not tonight, not in your lifetime. In approximately 5 billion years, the sun will exhaust its hydrogen fuel, expand into a red giant, and consume the inner solar system, including Earth. It will not disappear. It will arrive. It will be the last light this planet ever received, and it will be too much. But that is another story. The question that remains, the one this video cannot answer, the one that physics and psychology and history can only point at from a distance, is this. What would survive? Not biologically, not technologically, but culturally. What would a species carry into the dark? What book? What music? What memories of a star they could no longer see? That answer may already exist, because there is a project currently active, currently funded, currently operational, that is designed to answer exactly that question, what humanity preserves when it believes it might be the last. If you want to know what we, as a species, decided was worth preserving, worth sending into the dark at 17 kilometers per second toward no particular destination, that story is next. And the thing Sagan wasn't allowed to include will change how you think about what we actually value.